Australia, as you know, is the second best country in the world. So it's great to be in the greatest country in the world. And we are about the same size as America in physical dimensions, and we have similar flood problems to you. The FMA was formed following major fatal floods back in the 1950s and held its first conference in 1961. So we've come a long way, and our chair mentioned the proclamation that Doug gave us in 2010, which we very much appreciate. And now I think I'm looking forward to working with Larry, whose suggestion is that we perhaps investigate a memorandum of understanding between our two great associations. So I'm very excited about that too, but more of FMA later. I might even have a challenge for you. I've been asked to speak briefly about flood insurance, climate change and mitigation. Firstly, on insurance in Australia, unlike the US, we don't have a national flood insurance program. Up until 2007, we had no flood insurance whatsoever. In 2007, major flooding caused havoc, basically, and the New South Wales government directed the insurance companies to pay out on all claims, even though policies didn't cover flood insurance. So after that, the insurance companies decided, well, if this is going to happen in the future, we better get some policies in place, which they did, and in order to do so in a competitive market, they needed flood studies and data, which was largely in the possession of councils. So that's where FMA came in. Many of our members are actual local councils in the Floodplain Management Australia, and we've worked with our members and the insurance industry so that cooperation was gained to release that data from the councils to insurance companies so they could more accurately calculate risk. Our website has fact sheets which answer frequently asked questions and help bring about that spirit of cooperation between the councils and the insurance companies, so that now most companies offer flood insurance at a reasonably competitive rate, and 98% of properties in Australia are covered by flood insurance. Moving to climate change, what have we done there? Well, most Australians do believe that climate change is real. However, we can't seem to convince the politicians to agree on anything to do with climate change. The states can't agree, and we only have 6 large states, so we would have no hope of reaching any agreement if we had 50 states like the US. The state and federal government agencies have issued guidelines on climate change, things like sea level rise, increased rainfall intensity, warmer temperatures. We're predicting by 2100 about 3 feet sea level rise. However, it's still up to local councils to develop their own policies. Some coastal councils are making development decisions such as lot filling to 2100, 1% flood height, high level evacuation routes, larger drainage designs, etc. But it's still a bit of a mismatch. The case law is interesting, with one council losing a case for not taking climate change into account, but then having that decision overturned subsequently on appeal. So the people that are benefiting from the doubt are the lawyers, I guess you could say, who are running cases for and against taking climate change into account. The good news is there are some recent guidelines published on hydrology in Australia. It now provides advice on percentage increases in rainfall intensity, and you can Google that under Australian Rainfall and Runoff, or AR&R. I need to talk about mitigation, and Australia is not what you would call the world leader. In 2015, the total damage bill was $15 billion in Australia, which is a lot for Australia. Deloitte's estimate that the annual cost in 2050 will be $33 billion per year. Yet Australia continues to only invest $50 million a year on preventative measures. We compare that to Holland, where 97% of flood-related expenditure is spent on prevention and mitigation, and only 3% on cleaning up afterwards. Australia is the exact opposite, spending 97% on cleaning up afterwards and only 3% on preventative measures. So we have to change that around, and I admire the investment that the United States makes in floodplain management, and we use that as an example, the seriousness that you take floodplain management, and we take that message back to Australia. An interesting side effect in our investigation is the cost of social impacts. The costs of your Hurricane Katrina and our Cyclone Yasi and Cyclone Debbie last year doesn't include things like marriage breakups, alcoholism, stress-related illness, suicide, loss of employment, all those social impacts. The boss of Red Cross in Australia is quoted as saying that the social impacts of flooding and natural disasters amounts to an extra 50% of the total damage bill. 50%. So still in all, sadly, major mitigation measures seem harder to achieve in Australia due to lack of funding, but mainly due to politicians who are very sensitive to minority group objections in the community. Some recent moves in the right direction are in the state of Queensland, and their most recent two towns where they've constructed flood protection levees have resulted in reduced damage, of course, but interestingly, a 70% reduction in those insurance premiums that I talked about. So they're the three topics that I had for you today. In closing, let me go back to that FMA challenge. I tried to think last night of something that I could inspire you with or impress you with. So all I could come up with is this. Australia has a population of 22 million people. Now, we get 400 of those to our conference every year. America has a population of 300 million people. That's 15 times the population of Australia. So if you're going to compete pound for pound with Australia, you've got to get 15 times as many people to your conference as what we get to ours. My maths, that's about 6,000 people. Anyway, the good news is that my fellow Australians in the room, Alan and Rudy, will be happy to come and help you out each year to try and boost those numbers. To finish with, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a world first for you. A highlight of our conference is the awarding of the Harold Sternbeck Medal for Best Presentation each year. Now, Harold was a floodplain management stalwart who for many years was chairman of our association. This year, this is the first year ever that this medal has been awarded to an international non-Australian speaker. So it's my pleasure to choose this event and this conference to announce that award, which this year the winner of the 2018 Harold Sternbeck Medal is Michael McMahon from HDR in their Denver office. Michael is away overseas at the moment. Yes, thank you. By all means, acknowledge that. It's our most prestigious award, and Michael is away overseas this week, but we were able to contact him, and he was thankful to everyone, especially all those people who've worked with him, like Mark Forrest and those in HDR and in his previous career, which gave him ammunition to draw on for his presentation. So well done to Michael. So we're very pleased that it was an American as the first international speaker to win this award, and congratulations to Mike. Today, I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity of being with you, and thank you for a magnificent week of conferencing. Thank you.